Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Society. I am sitting here with Alysia Pope, who a lot of you probably know as Purely Pope on Instagram. This is part of a two-part series. So you're also going to hear the episode that I did on Alicia's podcast, which is so much fun. And I think it was honestly one of my favorite interviews that I've done so far. She's an amazing interviewer, and it just really gave me a lens to talk about community building. So I'm incredibly excited to flip the mic and have her on now. Welcome to the show, Alysia.
Thank you so much for having me. And that was such a good episode. You were filled with so much value and good tips. So I'm excited for everybody to hear that too, if they haven't
Oh,
already.
I love that. That's so sweet. Okay, I'm going to flip the script and we're going to do rapid fire questions first before we get
Okay,
in. Ready to go?
perfect. Love it.
Okay. What is your absolute favorite way to work out?
Pilates.
Any specific kind?
I love reformer Pilates. And now that studios are open again, I'm obsessed with that. So that's been amazing. But then my online go-tos are BB Fit and Melissa Wood. And they kind
Amazing.
of each have their own style too, where it's like a low impact cardio thing, or maybe it's a toning thing. But then I love Melissa Wood's like standing series, those sorts of things. So those are kind of my go-tos.
Love it. What is your absolute favorite song to work out to?
I would say Head and Heart. I don't know the artist, but it goes like dun 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 dun. Dun. It's like it's the most upbeat song ever. I love it so much. But
I love
I
that.
actually too, it depends on the workout for me because it's like if I'm doing a Melissa Wood flow, which is very calming and grounding and whatever, but still really challenging. I always like to do, I usually have like Tyler Rich in the background. He's my favorite country artist. So I'm usually playing Tyler Rich or something like that, or like a Jack Johnson sort of vibe. But if I'm doing something more upbeat, like BB Fit, her workouts are more upbeat, then I'll typically do like a more like techno EDM vibe.
I love that. Do you prefer, I mean, this isn't rapid fire, but do you prefer if a workout has music programmed or do you like to use your own music?
I like to use my own music. I kind of prefer that. I would rather people not have the music on there because
Yeah,
I have very specific music that I like.
I love that.
So,
That's so cool.
yeah.
Okay, software that you cannot run your business without.
Software that I can't run my business without. Okay, so I would say definitely Adobe Premiere. That is huge because I use it for my YouTube, for my podcast, all that sort of stuff. I would say Adobe Premiere for sure is another. And another one that I absolutely love too is my schedule Acuity. I use for like all my scheduling. So I use that for
Mm-hmm.
my podcast interviews. I use that for my clients. So I know that's not just one, but those are two
Mm-hmm.
things that I use all the time.
Yeah, no, those are two like must-haves, definitely.
Yeah.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Naples, Florida.
Ooh.
and and I know that that's actually because right now I live in Los Angeles. So I'm like anywhere where there's sunshine,
Yeah.
honestly. But ideally I'd like to be bi-coastal. So I
Mhm.
would say that I guess that's more so it. I would love to still always have a place here, but then also have my place in Naples, Florida.
Yeah.
But because too, it's like for me, it's like I could say somewhere like Italy, like the Amalfi Coast or Monaco or whatever. But for me, family is so important and I want to be near family. So I'm like,
Totally.
okay, if I'm being actually truthful and logical on this answer, then it would definitely be there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, my family lives in California and New York. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I got to be in both. Like it's
Yep.
just,
Exactly.
how it has to be.
Exactly.
What is advice that you would give your younger self?
To stop worrying about pleasing other people and start worrying about pleasing yourself.
So good and so important.
Yeah.
What is your dream job besides what you're doing right now? Like a pilot or something crazy?
I was thinking about this because you sent it over in advance. And I'm like, what I'm doing right now. But I would say another thing that I absolutely love that's a passion of mine is I did competitive cheerleading for years and I always really loved coaching and doing that. So I would say maybe like owning my own cheerleading company where it's like I'm coaching girls and the teams and all of that and like running that sort of business. That would be a really
Yeah,
fun job for me.
that sounds super fun. Okay, last rapid fire question. What is one lesson that you took from 2020 that you want to keep with you?
that success isn't only measured in monetary gains, and it's
Mm,
also measured in your personal growth, like both within your life outside of career, but also
mhm,
within career too. So I would
mhm.
say definitely that success is measured in all different kinds and
Yeah.
not just monetarily. And that's not everything. So
Yeah.
that's a lesson that I've learned.
Yeah. And like how rested you are,
Yeah,
right? Like, yeah,
totally.
that's
Totally.
such a good one. I love that. Okay, amazing. Now, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? You said you're based in Los Angeles, but what does your day to day look like? Like, I know you have so many different arms of your business. So let's first like introduce yourself and then we can kind of get into all of that.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Alysia Pope, and I am in the Institute of Integrative Nutrition Health Coach. And I really focus on helping women know that they can have their cake and eat it too when it comes to their health. I actually just released an episode over on my podcast all about balance. And that is really just my approach. And it's funny because I learned it the hard way from going through very restrictive times with my health and wellness, through going through a lot of different shoulds and should not. So, a lot of the times, whatever I'm preaching in my business or through my health coaching or on my podcast is really what I needed to hear 5 to 10 years ago. And I know we kind of touched on that a little bit on my podcast too. But so that's really my mission and my goal, is to really just help women be the happiest, healthiest versions of themselves in a non-restrictive way. And just knowing that being healthy and well and having that goal is an amazing goal. But if it's ever taking you away from actually living and enjoying life and doing these things that you love, then we need to kind of take a step back and reevaluate. So that's a little bit about my approach and about me. And with my business, I do one-on-one health coaching. I have my podcast, I have my Instagram, and those are kind of like the three different arms of my Purely Pope business. And for anybody listening to, like I mentioned, my last name is Pope, so that's where the Purely Pope came from. It's really funny because my brothers and like my fiance sometimes will be like, "Ooh, polluted Pope," if they're like doing something, it's like if they're doing something, we always joke that like my brothers are the polluted Pope, that they're just always, like they're like, "Oh, I'm not being very pure today." So that's kind
So
of like a
funny.
running joke in our family. But as for my day to day, I'm really big on structuring my days in batches. So for example, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are my health coaching days most of the times. And that's really focused on working with clients. So those one-on-one appointments, and then anything that I need to do for those clients. So a lot of clients, some of them add on like recipes. So I put together different recipes for them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that they can use and kind of pick and choose from throughout the week or whatever. Or I'm just kind of prepping information and materials for our sessions, those sorts of things. So those days are really based on the health coaching, and also to any sort of corporate things that I do. So that's kind of like another little thing that I do as well that I didn't mention before. So those days are also based on that. So preparing for those, for any virtual events that I'm doing, or even any sort of marketing things that I need to do for those sorts of events. So a lot of times for corporate virtual events, I'll do like work from home nutrition, or 10 tips on how to be healthier from home, or clean cocktail classes, or a smoothie workshop, things like that. And a lot of times I'll even like mail out boxes for them for those classes. So that's like on Tuesdays and Thursdays are health coaching, and then like corporate clients, and Wednesdays and now kind of Fridays as well are usually all podcasts. And I'm sure, as you know, it's like that takes up a lot of time with, especially because I recently launched my podcast. So I just released the 12th episode today. So I'm about like, and I'm doing weekly episodes. So it's like I'm a few months in now, but that takes a lot of time. So because I'm editing
It's
it
so
and
much time.
yeah, it's so much. So it's like I'm editing it, I'm putting it on YouTube too, because I think that the video portion of it is really important to me. So I'm putting together the promotion materials, getting it
Mhm.
up on all the different platforms, all that good stuff. So Wednesdays are always my recording days, but also to the editing and getting everything ready for the next day for it to launch. And I'm actually working right now to get like edited a few weeks ahead, so that I'm
Yeah.
not always working on like the episode that it needs to be, like the
Yeah.
week prior or whatever. And then Mondays and like really Friday afternoons are dedicated to like brand emails, shooting content. And a lot of times that goes over the weekend too. So, but I really do try to batch my days in that way because I found that it's really easy to just kind of get in that one mode and that mindset and not have to jump from thing to thing or, like different hat, especially as like a solopreneur of having to jump from, accounting and brand invoices to creative to editing and all these different hats that you wear. So that's kind of like my day to day.
100%. I mean, that was such a fantastic explanation. And I think was such a good window into how much actually goes on behind the scenes. Like I was chatting with a client about this yesterday and we were saying like just how overwhelming it is to look at everybody's Instagram and think that they're doing, that they're like everybody's making like well into six figures and that they're like on private jets and whatever. And there is so much work that goes on behind the scenes that isn't photographed and that you don't see. And I feel like you've been in the influencer space for a long time now. I feel like you're like one of the OGs. Like I remember seeing your Instagram many years ago, right? Like when did you
Yeah, thank
first
you.
start like when did you start?
I'm trying to think about it. I think I launched my Instagram probably like 4 years ago now.
Okay.
So yeah, so it feels like a long time now. Yeah, because it's so funny because it's like I see new people starting out now too. And I'm just like, okay, yep, it's in for a wild ride, right?
Yeah.
But I always try to remind myself too, because of course, like you were mentioning, it's really hard to get stuck in the comparison trap and you see things that become so seamless and that look so seamless, it's like, oh my God, how is this person doing this and cleaning their house and being a mom and getting all this business? And you know what I mean? And it does get very easy to compare yourself. But that's why for my own platform, it's always really important for me to kind of show the behind the scenes and show also too, if I am having like moments of self-doubt or moments of imposter syndrome, because my whole goal is to empower women and make them feel really confident in themselves and love themselves and whatever. And if what I'm putting out is only the perfection and is only all these good things, then I'm kind of doing them a disservice because I don't ever want somebody to come to my page and feel discouraged. I want them to feel encouraged, So I think it is really important to talk about all that and talk about the struggles because that's real life. And that's really what I do with like my coaching too, because even when it comes to like food freedom things which is what I coach my clients on a lot, I like to talk about on Instagram now all the time of like, no, listen, like I still have thoughts like, oh no, you probably shouldn't eat that, just because I'm a coach doesn't mean that I'm perfect, and you're probably always going to have random thoughts or setbacks that happen. But the point is that it's like, you just choose not to listen to them. Right. So yeah, so I think that that's something that's really important to think about and remember. It's like, everybody has struggles, like nothing is coming easy. And Instagram really is only like literally stories are what can be max like 5 minutes of a 24-hour day, which is wild. It's so crazy. So
do you feel like the grace kind of that you have with yourself now with the comparison trap in business is related to the healing kind of that you did with restrictive eating? And like do you think those two things are related right now?
Yeah, I definitely do. And it's so funny because I think it comes from, again, that self-love and just really worrying about what is going to be best for me in any given moment versus really pleasing other people. And I do think that they are very aligned because a lot of my approach to wellness and health is number one, it's mindset. And I think that mindset is the most important piece, I think, in having a successful business as well. And just again, like also like not stopping, and not worrying, because I think that sometimes even with launching the podcast, for example, it's really freaking scary. You're like, what if nobody listens? What if nobody subscribes to it? What if nobody reviews it? And it's like, that's kind of out there for the world to see, you know what I mean? And that's every single piece of content that you put out as a creator that's out there for the world to see. People can see how many views you get. They can see how many likes you get, all these different things. And there can be this crazy pressure, but I have slowly over the years stopped worrying what other people think and just worrying about what I think. And I think that the most important thing to remember is is just not to stop, you know? And it's like, no, you're putting this out there and people are finding value in it, you know? And it's like, when you have any of those sorts of downtimes, you have to remember those nice messages that you get. Like, I actually have a folder on my phone of screenshots of like DMs or like client texts of things that have just really made me feel good, or, you know, have just been really encouraging or nice messages that I'll go to and read whenever I'm feeling, you know, down or whatever. So to answer your question, yeah, I totally think that they're parallel and aligned. And I think it all comes down to taking that time for yourself and putting yourself first and worrying about you over other people. And I know that that sometimes can seem selfish, but in the reality, in the long run, you're actually going to be showing up as a better version of yourself for your business, for your clients, for everybody around you, really.
100%. And it's so important, I think, you need to build that confidence. And it's funny, right? Because like you said, it can seem selfish, but it's like, as entrepreneurs and as solopreneurs, like we have so many different arms of our business, and everybody listening to this podcast, I know, is entrepreneurs and fitness instructors and studio owners. And they're people that have their own businesses. And most of the time, I would argue probably 90% of people listening to this, including you and me right now, do not have a boss saying like, hey, good job. Like you're doing, you know what I mean? Like we don't have anybody reflecting back to us the work that we've done. So having those DMs and having those messages and reviews, and even like your Google reviews, all those things are so important to just reinforce what you're doing in the world. So I love that you said that. And I think that is such a great tip, to just put all of that somewhere and, you know, just know that you have it and know that like that is what people think of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's ever like even via email or whatever, even if you email it to yourself, take a screenshot and email it to yourself. I actually started doing this when I first worked at like corporate event planning. And the girl that's training me, I'll call her out. Her name was Sarah. The girl that was training me in corporate event planning, she said, she was like, listen, she's like, this job can get stressful, which is funny because it's like, okay, at the end of the day, you're planning a party. And that's what we would always tell ourselves if you get too stressed. But we're like, listen, this job can get stressful, and the higher ups like can get like really, really scary sometimes, whatever. She's like, so you're going to make a happy folder, and any good email that you get that makes you feel happy or whatever, you're going to put those emails in that happy folder. And whenever you're having a down day, you're going to go and look at that happy folder. And I was like, that is the coolest tip ever. And so I have that now with having my own business, because it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that that is one of my biggest struggles from going from working. Well, it's kind of funny because I was in the corporate space and then I worked for a startup, and now I'm totally out on my own. So it was kind of gradual, but that was one of the biggest things for me that was a struggle, was not necessarily having those things, because I'm like, okay, what's next? What's the next thing? Like I always prided myself on getting promotions quickly, right? It was like, okay, I was at my company 6 months, I'm promoted, you know, what's the next thing? And I was always looking, okay, what's the next title, or what's the next promotion, or the raise, or a bonus, or this event was amazing. Here's your like your pat on the back for that. And that was something with taking my own business. I had to figure out, how am I giving this to myself? So that's when I really reinstated that like happy folder sort of thing. And also just kind of trying to find metrics for myself on, okay, how am I measuring my success? And it's really crazy because I just finished a notebook, and I looked back to the beginning of the notebook, and it was actually September of 2020. And I had written down my goal of what I wanted to launch. I wanted to launch my podcast, and I wrote out the why, and I wrote out all the different steps to get there, the things of what I needed to get there. And it's just taking the time to look back at that journal. I was like, holy shit. Like I wrote about this a year ago and I did it, you know, and there's other goals that I wrote down that I haven't accomplished yet that are still in progress, but I'm like, damn, like I did that. That's amazing. You know? So I think that taking that time to reflect and look back is really, really important.
Yeah. And I mean, at a corporate job, you have check-ins, right? Like you have check-ins every 6 months, you have check-ins every year with your boss, and they measure your progress. So like we also need to be doing that with ourselves, you know, like, and it is, I think I agree with you. Every time I look back, you know, I feel like we get into these, we are entrepreneurs because we wanted to make things happen quickly. Like that's, that's just a hard and fast truth. Like we
Yeah.
like when things go really quickly. We don't like red tape. Like we're very much like, okay, this is something I want to do and I'm going to do it. And I think that's amazing. I think it makes the world go round. But there are the downsides are definitely that like the structure sometimes isn't there. And
Mhm.
it is so important for us to just reflect on, the 6 months, year sort of markers, because it is like, I know we would all be so surprised at everything that we were able to accomplish.
Totally, totally. And I actually heard on a podcast, I think it might have been the Lewis House podcast,
Mhm.
and he was talking about how once a month he has in his calendar growth time. And during that time, he writes down any sort of ideas that he has. And he actually has like a folder of all these different ideas for growth of his business or whatever. And he looks at it each month and sees, okay, am I ready for this idea or am I not? And also kind of reflects on where he's at or where he's come, like, just along the
Mhm.
year. And I think that that's really cool. I added it to my calendar, but I haven't actually done it's in my calendar each month, but I haven't actually done it. It's been in
Yeah.
there for like 4 months now. So I need to do that. But it's like it's something that I need to get better at myself. And it's something that I'm working through, but I think it
Yeah.
is a really important topic to talk about because it has been something that I've struggled with. But
Yeah.
it's like taking that time and taking those moments. But I think also too, and this kind of relates back to the comparison trap thing. I'm just realizing that I had this epiphany the other day when I was stressing out about social media because I was like, okay, right now the algorithm is all over the place. I'm like, okay, you can
Mhm.
post a static photo and literally nobody will see it. You post a reel, okay, maybe people will see it, whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of all over the place. It's like one day stories can be like this many views, the next day it could
Yep.
be 10 times. It's crazy.
Mhm.
But I was really thinking about it and I was like, you know what? It's like, even if I never get one more follower on Instagram
Mhm.
or whatever, I was like, I am successfully running a business right now with
Mhm.
everything that I have. And I think that just focusing in on that is really important too. You know what
Yep.
I mean? Of
Yep.
focusing in on what you have and providing the best value and service to what you have right now.
Mhm.
That's really where your growth is going to come. It's not consistently going to come from looking outward and being like, what don't I have? And how can I
Mhm.
grow from what I don't have? I think that the most growth really comes in on when you're looking at what do I have and how can I be the best of service to these people that I have right now. And I had that sort of
100%.
epiphany and it was a game changer for me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I just keep trying to
Yes.
have that mindset.
Yes, 100%. And that is so incredibly important. I'm writing a post now on how retention is more important than acquisition. And, in the fitness industry, that's something that's just absolutely true, but it is also true for every other industry. And it is like, how many followers do you have on Instagram right now?
Like 13.8K.
Okay. So if you had almost 14,000 listeners of your podcast, if you had almost 14,000 reviews of your podcast, right? If you had 14,000 people be a part of your coaching group, like that's insane. And
Yeah.
that would absolutely change your business, right? And I think that's where we all need to reframe, even whoever's listening, even if you have 100 followers, like if you had 100 people purchase from your business, that would be a really big deal. So it's like we
Totally.
have to stop looking at these numbers as like these small little dots on a screen, because they're not. They're human beings. They're people who like care about what we have to say. They care about the guidance that we want to provide. And it is so much more about your relationship with each and every person than it is about getting anybody new, because you're
Yeah.
so right. Like once you focus on the value that you can bring those people, the other, like everybody else will follow, right? Like
Yeah.
when it stops becoming about like gimme and it becomes more about serving, everything changes. And I love that you brought that up, because I don't think that's something that we talk about enough, of like
Yeah.
truly how important each person that's already in your net really is.
Totally, totally. It's so important. And also too, it allows you to provide better value when you're not necessarily searching externally for all these other things and you're really just focusing in on that like creation for them too. And that's
Mhm.
something else too that I've had to really focus on for my creative space because it's like you were saying, I wear a lot of different hats in my business and
Yeah.
a lot of times it can be really hard to have your own unique voice when you're so focused on the consumption and when you're so focused on what everybody else is doing. But I find that I'm the most creative and produce the best like content or ideas for my business when I'm just focusing on that creation versus that consumption. And that's something actually, I literally have a post-it note that I wrote on my little vision board that says create over consume, because I think that it is really important to really just focus in on what you are doing and your unique message. And I know that a lot of people in the fitness space listen to this too, but I think it's the same with like the health coaching space as well. As there's so many people out there doing it. But the thing is that you have your own unique voice, you have your own unique story, and honing in on that and what that is so important. Because if you're trying to teach the way somebody else is teaching or coach the way somebody else is coaching, it's not going to come out authentic, and you're not going to actually be providing value because you're basically just mimicking what somebody else is saying. So I think that that's really important too, to really just have those blinders on as well. And in this crazy world that we live in, that we can see what everybody else is doing at all times.
Right. Absolutely. So how do you, because it's hard. It's like it sounds easy, right? It sounds like, no, just put the phone down. But like, what are your tangible tips as someone who, like, Instagram is literally an arm of your business? It's not like a fun thing that you're doing. It's literally a revenue generating section of your business. Like, how do you set boundaries with yourself from, to sort of limit yourself, like just being on your phone 24 hours a day?
Yeah, it's hard and it's a work in progress. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm perfect at this. It's definitely always a work in progress for me and something that I'm working on all the time. But a few tangible tips. I have a limit on Instagram. Like, I have that timer on Instagram that my phone tells me it's set at an hour and a half a day. I ignore it or go like 15 minutes over or 30 minutes over most days, but at least I know how many times I'm hitting that, you know what I mean? And I try to be very cognizant of that. And when I'm on, actually, I wrote this down this morning in my journal, and I wrote, be more present when I'm consuming, and purposeful when I'm consuming, and not just scrolling mindlessly, because I think that that's part of it as well. So when I'm on Instagram, I try to make it really be for work. I usually never go on my personal Instagram anymore. So just making sure that you're being very purposeful with when you are on social media. So for example, when I'm on there, it's either because I'm sharing something or creating something on there, or I'm engaging with every single person that has commented on anything that I posted, or anybody that's tagged me in anything or responding to DMs. So I'm either engaging with like the community that I have or creating. And I try to have those two things be present at all times versus that mindless scrolling. When I do get caught in that scrolling, it's really after I've posted, because I find that like engaging after you post helps your post do better, of just engaging with other people's things. But that's really when I try to respond to those things. So I would say the time limit, as well as just being really mindful and purposeful about when I am on it, of, okay, am I engaging or am I creating, because I think that that's important too, to respond back and whatever. But I also am really conscious of who I'm following. And if you need to mute people, mute them. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with what they're doing or whatever, but I try to really just follow people that maybe aren't doing the same thing that I'm doing, because I found that when I am doing that, or when I am following too many other health coaches or looking at what they're doing, that's when I get stuck in that like consumption versus the creation, and it hinders my creativity and like my vision for my business. So, you don't have to unfollow people, but you can mute them or unfollow with love or whatever, so being very conscious of that too. Those would be like my tangible tips.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful. The mute button is your best friend.
Yes.
Really. Like, I think, yeah, it just is. Like, you can be generous with your mutes. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows. No one will know that you muted them. Like,
no.
It's okay. And yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great point too about the time limit. Cause I do the same. I mean, mine set at like 30 minutes, which is not realistic. And I should probably change that. But it is, I used to feel like I was a failure, if I was like, no, I want like 15 more minutes, but it does get you into the mindset of, you're like, all right, like I can click this, twice today, and then that's fine. Like, and then I'll be done, kind of thing. And I do yeah, I think that really helps so much. So that is super, super, just helpful, I think
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think this has just been amazing. This is like a great episode. I'm going to wrap us up here. Tell me where people can find you and how they can work with you.
Yes. So everything is Purely Pope, Purely Pope online. So purelypope.com. And that's where you can go to sign up for a free 30-minute health coaching consultation. So a lot of times too, and I think that this is something just knowing that like not every person that comes to you is going to be right for you, that it needs to be a fit both ways. So I promise I won't just sell you on health coaching if I don't think I can actually help you. There's been multiple people that I've turned away or multiple people that I'm like, hey, okay, this is what I think you need to do instead of working with me, So that's
Yeah.
kind of like what that call is always all about is I do give whatever tips I can within those 30 minutes, but it's always just kind of familiarizing ourselves with each other and getting to know each other and seeing if it is a good fit. So I would love to
Yeah.
do that with you guys, and that you can find online or even in my Instagram bio. And on Instagram, I'm at Purely Pope or at the Purely Podcast. And then on anywhere podcasts are found is the Purely Podcast. And then all my podcasts are also on YouTube too, all the interviews. So you can watch them too. And my YouTube is Purely Pope.
Amazing. We'll link to all of that in the show notes. But
Cool.
Alysia, thank you so much. This
Thank
was so
you.
fun that we got to do like a two-parter. I'm so
I
excited. We
know.
need to
I
do
love it.
we'll do a follow-up on
Yeah,
something
I
else.
know. I feel like we could chat for hours.
I know, me too. I know. I was like, do I go into another topic? And I was like, that
Yeah,
we could go forever.
I
So
know.
we'll
I
just do
know.
another episode.
Well, thank you
Amazing.
so much for having me.
Thank you.